everyone, I'm Nick Johnson, the host of Classical Pairings, and welcome back to the Classical Music Indy Host Challenge sponsored by the National Bank of Indianapolis. What we're doing this season is having local leaders in the arts send me a short video with a composition that I'm supposed to come up with a cocktail that I think matches, that you can drink at home and make out of a local spirit and enjoy some music. We can even make some comments and have some virtual time together, so feel free to comment on this video and let me know what you think. So today we've got Mark Schuster, a Performers Edition, a local publishing company. He sent me a video. Let's see what he's got to say. Take it away, Mark.
Hey, Nick. This is Mark Schuster with Performers Edition, local publisher of classical music here in Indianapolis. For your challenge, I'd like to give you the work of A. Paul Johnson, who is a local Indianapolis-based composer, and his Symphony No. 1, The Romantic. I chose this piece because I think it's a great representation of local music here in Indianapolis, and it gives you the challenge to make a drink that's locally inspired with local ingredients. Good luck.
All right, thank you, Mark. So I'm really excited about this one because I actually did not know this piece. So A. Paul Johnson is an Indianapolis composer, a local composer, but this piece, actually, the Symphony No. 1, I found out was recorded by the Prague Symphony Orchestra, and you can find a recording of it. The piece was originally written in 1995 and recorded just a little bit after that. So it was kind of fun for me to be able to discover a new piece of music, so thank you for that. When I was listening to this piece, what I heard was a lot of it's very cinematic, but it's also, to me, very American. And it sounded like I could hear a lot of influence of Copland in this piece, maybe even of John Williams. There's a lot of sort of cinematic moments in it. And there was one moment in particular that struck me, right around the 3-minute and 50-second part of the first movement. And so this cocktail is sort of specifically based on that one moment within this symphony. So hopefully we can listen to that when the time comes. But what we are looking for is there's a sort of color and warmth and kind of comfort that feels very perfect for this season right now of fall in Indianapolis. Even though we are turning to winter, I wanted a warm and comfortable and pleasant drink. And so what I came up with was sort of a drink based on a hot apple cider. And we're going to be mixing this with the Hard Truth's white rum. They're out of Brown County, just south of Indianapolis. And I also thought, however, you've got probably some time coming up with your family so that you can very easily make this drink and just leave the rum out and share this with your family members who are not drinking or not of age, and have a nice mocktail for them where you can kind of dress up apple cider and make it even more fun. So I've got some hot apple cider here, half a mug. I didn't really measure this, but you'll figure it out, kind of just however much cider you want. And we're going to add a few ingredients to this to make it a little more interesting. I'll start with all the non-alcoholic ingredients, and if you're doing this as a mocktail, then just stop at that point. We're going to start by adding a little bit of honey. And again, I don't actually tend to measure my cocktails. I just kind of tend to look and smell. So we're going to add that much honey. That was probably half a teaspoon. We'll say half a teaspoon. Why not? Half a teaspoon of honey, which hopefully the cider, if it's still hot, we're going to be able to melt a little bit of that in. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just give that a quick stir to get that honey to sort of go into it. It's going to give it just a little bit of extra sweetness to help it stand up to the rum that we're about to throw at it. But we've got a few other things. We're going to do, I like these root bitters. You could also just do an Angostura. Basically, what we're trying to do here is make the cider a little more mature and a little more interesting. And just a little bit of bitters, especially in a hot drink, it's going to, mostly you will notice it in the aroma of the beverage, and it's going to become even more interesting for the whole experience. We're going to add just a little bit of, I'm using imitation vanilla. If you're fancy, you can use real vanilla. This is just going to be a 1/4 teaspoon of it. Let's see if I can do this without spilling more of it in. Hey, I did it. Okay. A 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. And then the sort of secret ingredient, I actually really like doing this with apple cider, and that is Chinese 5-spice. It's got star anise, cloves, cinnamon, fennel, and black pepper. And you might think black pepper is kind of a weird choice with this, but there's something about the heat and the rest of the drink that it sort of just makes it far more of a complex taste. I mean, apple cider by itself can be a little bit tart and a little bit sweet, but this is going to add depth and complexity to it that is going to be really interesting. And so I just sprinkle some Chinese 5-spice right on the top of this. Honestly, anything that you might just sprinkle cinnamon into, like eggnog, try Chinese 5-spice. It's going to make it significantly more interesting and I think much more delicious. If you're making a mocktail, you're done. Go ahead and serve this to your family and you'll be happy. If, however, you're like me and you want a little bit of a spirit in it, we're now going to add some white rum to this. I'm going to add 2 shots, but that's because I really like white rum. For, I would say, a more general audience, or if you're making these for whatever part of your family you're spending some of the holidays with during COVID, you might want to bump that down to 1 shot. I think the 2 shots really balances it well. But I also find that the Hard Truth rum is really sweet and well balanced and works really well with this. We're now going to give this a stir. And you can make this in a coffee mug. You don't have to make it in a fancy mug. I care about presentation even when I'm making drinks for myself during a pandemic. You know, this is how I treat myself. That's what you're supposed to do, right? This is a very sort of grown-up apple cider in a way that you haven't really had it before. It's got a little bit, I mean, honestly, the rum doesn't kick at all. It's mostly just adding warmth and, to my palate, joy into this experience. The bitters make the aroma far more interesting. The vanilla and honey sort of color, it rounds it out a little bit. It basically takes the sweet and tartness of the apple cider and gets it closer into the rum. And then the Chinese 5-spice on top of it just makes it far more complex and rich. And I think that especially with this piece by A. Paul Johnson, it has the warmth, but also the complexity. This piece isn't just a bunch of consonant chords. There's some really kind of interesting and difficult harmonies in this piece that kind of go in and out of these different scenes. And I think you get this in this beverage. So there you have it. I hope that you enjoy this spiced cider with rum. Classical Pairings is a listener-supported podcast, video series, and blog. If you like what you hear, please text PAIR, that's P-A-I-R, to 202-858-1233 to help us keep bringing you the best in classical music paired with great craft food and beverage makers. So I'll see you next week, everybody. Thank you, and cheers.